How much did you pay for electricity last month? Write the number in the comments, just the number. I want you to see how many other people around you paid almost exactly the same amount. Because what I am about to show you right now is going to make that number feel like something very different than a utility bill. My name is Dr. Elena Ward. I am an independent energy researcher. And for the next several minutes, I want to talk about 7 men, 7 engineers who, at different points across the last 120 years, developed functional methods for generating electricity outside the commercial grid. 7 men whose work was documented, tested, and in several cases demonstrated in front of independent witnesses and military officials. 7 men whose research was then stopped. Not disproven. Stopped. If this is the first time you're hearing any of this, make sure you are subscribed. I release suppressed methods and documented research every single week, and most people miss them. I want to be very clear about something before we go any further. This is not a list of rumors. This is not a collection of things someone posted on a forum. This is a list of documented records, patents you can pull up today on the USPTO database, court documents, newspaper front pages from the 1920s, police reports filed with municipal authorities, FOIA responses from federal agencies. In several cases, military research funding that was officially started, officially funded, and then quietly terminated without public explanation. The paper trail exists. I have followed it for 8 years, and it leads to a pattern that is genuinely difficult to explain away. Before we get to the names, I need you to have 3 numbers in your head. 47. That is the approximate number of patents on non-conventional electricity generation filed in the United States between 1920 and 1960 that were never commercially developed. Not because they failed in testing, because no development funding appeared after the initial filing. 47 inventions, in the public record, sitting there. 111. That is the number of related academic papers I have traced that were either withdrawn from university circulation or simply never published following initial submission. I did not find all of these myself. Some were cataloged by researchers before me, but I verified them. 11. Annie, that is the specific number I have personally confirmed through direct archive requests. I contacted the institutions. I requested the physical documents. In 11 cases, I received confirmation that the document existed in the catalog and was not available for access. No date of withdrawal, no explanation. Just not available. That happens once, and it is administration. It happens 11 times in the same research area, and it is something else. Now let me explain the science, because this matters for understanding what these men actually built. The commercial electricity grid runs on alternating current, AC. The infrastructure built around AC is enormous. Transformers, substations, switching stations, copper wire measured in millions of miles, metering equipment at every home and business. A billing infrastructure that requires all of that physical hardware to exist and to be maintained. When you pay your electric bill, you are not simply paying for electrons. You are paying for the delivery system. You are paying for the pipe more than the water. There are 3 categories of electricity generation that do not require that pipe, and all 3 appear in the work of the engineers on this list. The first is ground-based electrochemical generation. Soil contains dissolved mineral salts. When 2 dissimilar metals are inserted into moist soil, a galvanic reaction begins. A measurable voltage appears between them. This is not fringe science. This is first-year electrochemistry. The exact same principle behind every battery and every device you have ever owned. The difference is that soil is a continuous medium. That you do not replace it. You do not recharge it. It is simply there. The second is atmospheric electrostatic harvesting. The Earth carries a net negative electrical charge. The ionosphere, located approximately 80 kilometers above the surface, carries a net positive charge. Between those 2 surfaces runs a potential difference of roughly 300,000 volts. That potential is constant, day and night, storm and calm. Tesla documented and measured it in Colorado Springs in 1899. A German-Estonian engineer named Hermann Plauson filed more than 40 patents on methods for capturing it in 1920. The physics of this potential difference are not in dispute in any textbook. What is in dispute is why no one developed it commercially. The third is resonant inductive transmission, and the principle that energy sent through a coil at a specific resonant frequency can be received and converted by another coil at a distance without a physical wire connecting them. In 1899, in Colorado Springs, Tesla demonstrated this. He powered 200 light bulbs from a transmitter located 25 miles away. The demonstration was witnessed. The output was measured. The patent was filed. US 645576. It is in the public domain. You can read it today. And then the funding was withdrawn. I own 2 editions of the same electrical engineering textbook, the 1962 edition and the 1978 edition. Same title, same publisher, same author. Chapter 7. In the 1962 edition covers resonant frequency transmission in detail, 12 pages, diagrams, component specifications, load calculations. In the 1978 edition, that chapter does not exist. The chapters around it are renumbered as though nothing was removed. I have shown both editions side by side to 3 working electrical engineers. All 3 gave me essentially the same answer: a shrug. One of them said he had simply never thought about it. That is not an accident in a technical textbook. That is a decision made by an editor and a publisher and whatever pressures surrounded them in 1978. Now, the 7 engineers. Nikola Tesla. Most people know the name. Very few people know the end of the story. In 1901, Tesla broke ground on Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, New York. The plan was wireless power transmission across the entire North American continent. J.P. Morgan was funding the project, then he stopped. Not because the science failed testing, because it worked. Morgan's concern, documented in correspondence from the period, was that a wireless delivery system generates no billing event. A signal that travels through the ionosphere has no pipe, no meter, no infrastructure to own, no way to charge per unit of consumption. He withdrew funding in 1904. The tower was never completed. It stood unfinished for 13 years and was demolished in 1917 to pay a debt. Tesla died on January 7, 1943, alone in room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel in Manhattan. Within 48 hours of his death, the U.S. Office of Alien Property arrived and sealed his room. His papers, his notebooks, his models were seized. Some were later reviewed by MIT scientists under a government directive. A portion eventually made its way to the Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade, where they remain today. A portion is unaccounted for in any public archive. The official record does not explain the gap. Tesla died in 1943. The official cause was coronary thrombosis. The disposition of a significant portion of his research files remains an open question in archival literature. I want you to think about this for a moment. The same man whose patents run through every wall socket in your home. The man whose alternating current system is the reason the grid exists at all. That man died alone in a hotel room with nothing. And the government was in his room before the newspapers had reported his death. I am not asking you to reach a conclusion. I am asking you to hold that fact and decide for yourself what it means. Thomas Henry Moray, Salt Lake City, Utah. Beginning in the early 1920s, Moray developed what he called a radiant energy device, a box roughly the size of a briefcase that he claimed could draw ambient electrical energy from the environment without any conventional fuel source. He demonstrated it repeatedly. In front of engineers, in front of faculty from the University of Utah, in front of representatives from Utah Power and Light, the local utility company. The demonstrations produced measurable electrical output. External inspections found no hidden power source. The witnesses signed statements. The Moray case is the one that kept me up the longest in this research. I found a photocopy of a Salt Lake City police report filed in 1931. 2 lines. Shots fired at the residence of T.H. Moray, researcher, no arrests, no follow-up. 2 lines and a case number that went nowhere. I cross-referenced it against the Utah State newspaper archives from the same period. Between 1929 and 1934, there were at least 4 separate documented incidents at Moray's property. Each one filed, none resolved. Moray himself stated in correspondence, which is in the public record, that his devices were stolen, and that his laboratory had been accessed without his permission on multiple occasions. He was not a man making unverifiable claims in private. He was filing police reports. That is a different category of evidence entirely. Moray died in 1974. Official cause was cardiovascular disease. He was 81. The documented pattern of interference he reported throughout his research years is on the public record for anyone who wants to look. Edwin Vincent Gray, Los Angeles, California. In the early 1970s, Gray was demonstrating what he called the electromagnetic association motor, a device he claimed could run on what he described as cold electricity, a form of electrical discharge he believed existed in a differentiated phase state from conventional current. His patent was filed in 1975, United States Patent number 3890548. That document is publicly accessible on the USPTO website today. In 1974, 1 year before the patent filing, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department raided Gray's laboratory. Equipment was seized. The stated grounds were consumer fraud related to investment solicitation. No criminal charges were ever filed. The equipment was not fully returned. The motor development stopped. Gray died in 1989. Official cause was natural causes. The 1974 raid and the equipment seizure are documented in Los Angeles Superior Court records. Here's something I do not hear anyone else in this space say. Some of these men were probably wrong. Not all 7, but some. And the suppression still happened anyway. That is what makes this harder to dismiss, not easier. You do not suppress a bad idea. A bad idea collapses under its own weight. What you suppress is an idea that threatens something you already own. The suppression itself is the signal. John Ernst Worrell Keely, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Between 1874 and 1898, Keely claimed to generate mechanical power from vibratory resonance. He attracted substantial investment over more than 2 decades. He demonstrated devices publicly on multiple occasions. When he died in 1898, investigators examined his laboratory and found evidence of a concealed compressed air mechanism beneath the floor. This was reported in Scientific American in 1899. Keely may have been a fraud. I say may because the compressed air system explains some of his demonstrations, not all of the measured outputs his witnesses recorded. But Keely is on this list not because his device worked. He is on this list because his case was used to discredit the entire field of non-conventional energy research for 30 years after his death. One man whose work may have been fraudulent. 3 decades of closed doors in an entire category of research. That ratio is worth noticing. Lester J. Hendershot, Michigan. In 1928, Hendershot built and demonstrated what he called the fuelless generator, a device claiming electrical output without conventional fuel input. In March of that year, he demonstrated it at Selfridge Field, a United States Army Air Corps base in Michigan, in front of serving military officers. After the demonstration was covered by the Detroit Free Press on March 1, 1928. Military interest was documented. And then, within weeks, it was gone. I filed a FOIA request regarding the Selfridge Field demonstration in 2021. The response I received directed me to a specific archive. When I contacted that archive, I was told the relevant files had been transferred during an administrative reorganization. The receiving archive had no record of them. I want to be honest with you about what that means. Files get lost. Reorganizations are real. But I have now encountered this specific sequence. FOIA request leads to archive leads to transfer leads to no record. 7 times in 8 years of this research. 7 times. Always in the same subject area. That is a pattern. Hermann Plauson, German-Estonian engineer. In 1920, Plauson was granted British Patent GB157443. The patent describes in technical detail a system for harvesting the potential difference between the Earth's surface and the upper atmosphere, using collector arrays suspended from balloons or kites at high altitude. The physics are grounded in the same electrochemical principles that appear in introductory atmospheric science. Between 1920 and 1925, Plauson filed more than 40 related patents across Germany, the United Kingdom, and Switzerland. 40 patents in 5 years is not a hobbyist. That is a systematic program of research and documentation. After 1927, Plauson disappears from every record I have been able to locate. No further patents, no published papers, no correspondence, no obituary in any archive I can access in 3 languages. A man who filed 40 patents in 5 years simply stops. No record of why, no record of where. That absence is itself a data point. Thomas Townsend Brown, 1905 to 1985, American physicist. Brown spent decades investigating what became known as the Biefeld-Brown effect, the relationship between high-voltage electrical charge and directional gravitational or propulsive force. Between 1952 and 1955, his research was funded under a classified U.S. Navy program called Project Winter Haven. The program investigated electrogravitic applications. In 1955, funding was terminated. Brown continued privately. In the 1990s, documents related to Project Winter Haven were released through Freedom of Information Act requests. Those documents confirm the program existed. They confirm that Brown's work was evaluated at the level of military research leadership. They confirm a decision was made to end public development. Brown's work on ion propulsion is still cited in current peer-reviewed research. The branch of his investigation concerning energy generation from the electrogravitic effect, the part that was stopped, is not cited anywhere. Brown died in 1985. Official cause was natural causes. The classified program and its termination are a matter of declassified public record. I have spent 8 years on this research. I have read the patents, the police reports, the newspaper front pages, the FOIA responses. And I want to be honest with you about something. I cannot prove that every one of these 7 cases represents an intentional coordinated suppression. What I can prove is that the pattern exists. 7 researchers, 7 documented points of interference, different cities, different decades, different agencies, different governments in 2 cases. The same result every time. That pattern does not require me to tell you what to conclude. It requires you to look at it directly. Now here's what you do with this information. Because information without application is just a video you watched and forgot. The Plauson atmospheric patents and the Moray radiant energy research both point toward the same underlying physical principle: a differential electrical potential that exists everywhere on Earth, at every moment, independent of weather or season. The Earth is one electrode. What you need is a method of accessing the other. The entry-level version of this, the version that is accessible today with materials from any hardware store, starts with understanding ground-based galvanic generation, copper and zinc in moist soil, a simple 2-electrode setup that produces measurable voltage. You can verify it with a $12 multimeter from any electronic supplier. This is not a metaphor. This is documented electrochemistry, the same chemistry that powered the first telegraph lines before the grid existed. In the next video I am releasing, I walk through the complete setup. The materials cost under $6. Assembly takes under 40 minutes. I will show you exactly what output to expect, what the documented research says about the principle, and how the engineers on today's list used this same foundation as their starting point before the interference began. You now know more about suppressed electrical research than the overwhelming majority of people on this planet. That knowledge is documented. It is in the public domain. It has always been there. Subscribe, share this with someone who pays too much for power every month, and watch the next video. I have already put it together for you. The link is right here.